Hello, this is Life Coach Angelia, and we are doing Works of Heart's Teen Pregnancy Life Coaching Program. And last time we were talking about, vulnerability in pregnant teenagers. So we're going to pick up on, affect and behavior. Some of them will have difficulty with self-regulation. I mean, teenagers aren't known for having self-regulation. So definitely when you're full of hormones and pregnant, that's also not going to be the case. So that's something you need to work on with them. Get them in a schedule. Get them into taking care of themselves, especially, if they're going to have a baby, they need to take care of themselves so they can take care of that baby because you're not good for anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. Impulse control, again, teens are not known for impulse control, especially if you're full of hormones and pregnant. So that's something you need to work on them with. Talk about, think things through. Don't just do, because a lot of people just go with your gut. No, think things through. And then you can make wise decisions for you and your family. And management of anger, because teens are full of, angst and emotions. And so having a crying baby that they can't figure quite out what is wrong with them, it's going to be harder on them than it is for your, older person. Because they don't have the patience. Actually, in child development, they teach you that the best parents are between age 30 and 35. So that's the advice I've been giving my kids. They might not listen, but that's the advice I have been giving them. Excuse me. Low self-esteem, and especially if they had low self-esteem before they got pregnant, this is only going to compound that. So you need to tell them that they are a good person. They are smart or loving or kind or decent, whatever their strengths. Again, you want to play to their strengths. You want to build up their self-esteem, because they're going to be a mom or a dad if a dad is involved in this program with you. And you want them to have self-esteem so they can teach that to their children. Discouragement and depression. Now, we all get discouraged at some point in time. But if you're going to be a young parent, that's a little harder. You feel like, I can't do it. I give up, I quit. And you need, again, to play to their strengths, what they're good at. Find out what they're good at, play to that so they don't get so discouraged. And especially if they're not in the most supportive of homes, they may get discouraged because they may be getting told, you're stupid or you're bad at everything, you can't do anything, so you're going to have to build them up. And in depression, we all get situational depression. Some of us get, clinical depression, or, there's different kinds of, being in a bad situation. There's the chemicals and, hormones that play into this. But, you want to make sure they're not living, in depression so they can harm themselves and maybe harm the baby later on. If they need medication, then that's what they need. There's nothing worse than someone who needs medication and you tell them they need medication that you can tell, and they're not willing to get medication. That just complicates their life. And unless they're willing, to stay in therapy and work on this, then they're going to have serious problems. Possible emotional suppression. Now, teenagers can be in denial. No, I'm fine. I don't have a problem. Yeah. When really inside they're being eaten up. They're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I can't do this. I'm just not going to think about it until it actually happens, and then I'll worry about it then. So need to work on them, getting their emotions out. You need to purge. It's like I say to my coaching clients, you have to purge your garbage. Otherwise, it's going to sit in there and fester. And I don't know if you've ever put some garbage out and forgot it, or had to put some garbage in a can without putting a bag in. What happens to that garbage in that can that's outside? Yeah, it festers, gets maggots, all that kind of fun stuff. That'll happen in you if you let your emotions fester. I'm not talking literally, of course. I want somebody to I never had maggots grow in me. Oh, whatever. Over control. Sometimes they want to over control their environment. I know people like that who are just every little nuance, every little thing has to be in their control. And that's horrible to live like that, because in reality, your control is an illusion. You have control over nothing. Anything can happen at any time to just change everything about your life. Internalization. Children internalize what they hear about themselves. So, if other people are saying about this, person some things that aren't exactly nice, and I'm sure, they've heard that, then they're going to internalize that. And so your job is to tell them, when other people talk about you, it's almost never about you, it's about them. It's about their feelings, like they're afraid they might end up like you, or they don't like you, so they're picking on you anyway. There's just bullies out there in the world. There's just people who, you can have 10,000 pieces of evidence to show you're like the nicest person ever, and they're still going to decide, you're bad or whatever. So, to talk to them about not internalizing all this stuff that they might be hearing about themselves, especially if they're not living in a supportive home environment. Potential explosiveness. Like I said, teenagers are known to be moody and emotional. Add the hormones for pregnancy on top of that. You can imagine. So you need to talk about that. When, it's okay to vent and do your emotions. We all need to do that. But it's not okay to explode and go off on other people and, act like, well, we don't use the word crazy. But you know what I'm saying. Inappropriate risk taking. Again, this might be to try and get rid of the baby if they're not wanted. Dangerous physical things, fighting, drugs and alcohol. There was a girl not long ago, lost a baby, and she was doing all kinds of drugs and alcohol, and it's my honest opinion, it was because she didn't want that baby, and so she purposely did this. So you need to talk to these, people about that. What's not appropriate risk taking. And, they'll either listen or they're not going to listen. So, difficulty with taking in and or processing information, their cognition. They're already teenagers, they're already, preoccupied, but they might also be, so shocked that this is happening to them, and, just are not able to deal with it. And so they're confused, they're preoccupied, they're not doing well in school, their grades slip, or, they're not performing at work, or even doing their chores at home. And a little of that is normal, but when it becomes where it's affecting them, to the point where they're just not doing anything, then that's something that needs to be addressed. You need to step in and say, hey, I see you're struggling. I hear that you're struggling. Let's talk about that. And it's something, you can help them with. If they're just totally off track, they can, make notes, there's always ways to help them, but that's usually a red flag. It's a sign that they're having problems coping with their situation. Problematic or inconsistent judgment. Now we all have that at any given time in our life. But, some people, especially in their teens, especially if they're immature, they didn't come to the best household, can have problems with their thought processes. They don't have proper judgment. I mean, there's this girl who I talked to who, no matter what she's told, she does the exact opposite of that. And I thought it would be okay. I thought it would work out. So, there's some unrealistic thinking going on there. And you need to address that. You need to say, hey, is this working for you? Look at the decisions you're making. Are they wise decisions for you, and your future child? No, they're not. Why are you doing this? And usually there's an underlying reason, and if they're just, out of touch, then sometimes, you need to send them to therapy. You should always have, if you're a life coach, you should always have a therapist, as a referral source, because you can only coach so far. If there's mental illness involved, they need some therapy, you know. And if it's serious mental illness, they'll need to also have a psychiatrist or a good MD. You know, you need to have referral sources to help you with these things. Limited problem solving ability. Again, when you're a teenager, you don't have higher reasoning, logical thinking yet, so your problem solving ability is not going to be there. And it's not uncommon for teenagers to not understand follow through, and not understand how to get from point A to point B. There's steps in between. You can't say, I want to be there, and then how do we get there? So you need to be able to talk to them about their problem solving ability, and teach them. There's a lot of different things. You can Google it all. I've got things in my coaching programs for this. But you can teach people how to solve problems, like identify the problem, make an outline on steps that you could possibly use to solve this problem. And then, like I say, with any outline, you'll find little things in between that you can add, because it's never as simple as you think it is. But then you can work on the problem. Okay. Limited capacity for effective self-expression. Especially if they're living with their parents, which, if they're pregnant teen, more than likely they are, unless they're in a group home. They need to express themselves. They need to be able to say what they want to say and it be okay. They need to feel not, controlled and judged. They need to be able to express themselves artistically, or, however they need to, because they're having a lot of feelings. As you have a lot of feelings anyway as a teenager, but when you're, a pregnant teenager, you're having a lot more feelings. You got a lot more hormones going on, and you need to be able to express yourself. So this is something to encourage them with, and you might have to get mom and dad on board. Especially because usually it's mom and dad who are paying for you to coach a pregnant teenager, to catch her up on her, maturity and social skills. So you need to get them on board and, encourage them to express themselves. Limited understanding of condition or disorder. There was a girl who told my sister that you swallowed a feather and that's how you get pregnant. So there's some issues out there. You need to give them proper information. Like I said, getting a hold of pregnancy books, what to expect while you're expecting. They sell that everywhere, or other, different books. And you can be a source of information for them and give them this and teach them, what's going, how they know how they got this way, unless they're really, not mentally capable of knowing how they got this way. And, they need to know what their body's going through, what they're going to expect. It's good to be a source of information and teach them, because they might have some misinformation. And we all know, if we're a parent, that everybody means well. All your older relatives mean well, but they have a lot of advice that is pretty much old wives' tales, or that were, good ideas back 30 years ago, but we don't do that anymore. So, be a source of information for them so they get the proper information. Exclusion, ridicule, and social isolation. Well, we're all going through social isolation right now. But, pregnant teens go through that. People make fun of them, and they talk about them behind their back, and, they exclude them from things, because they're pregnant. And of course, that's going to hurt their feelings. It's going to lower their self-esteem. But you need to tell them that's, unfortunately a normal thing that happens, But, keep in touch with your friends, your good friends. And that's what I tell people about, the difference between good friends and frenemies. Because sometimes you have a lot of frenemies, but you might only have a few good friends. So you need to keep in touch with your good friends and just let your frenemies go. I mean, I've cleaned out, at one point I had over 2,000 friends on social media, and I've cleaned out over, 1,000 of them over a couple different times, because, I don't want to deal with no frenemies. My life is going down the hill. And I don't have time for that. I don't want to deal with no frenemies in my groove. Internal feeling of stigma. Well, chances are, especially their parents have made them feel like they're in a stigma condition. And I'm sure other people out in the community, especially there are some teachers at school, I heard, when I was in school, different comments made about students who got pregnant. And, even some schools will kick them out, won't even let them be in the school. Now, I think that policy is a district-wide policy now, so that, if that happens, the school just can't say, get out or whatever. But, tell them people, think what they think. They can't help what people think. What they think about themselves is the most important thing, and build them up. Limited peer relationships. Again, a lot of parents aren't going to want their daughter hanging around with a pregnant teenager, because of the stigma. Going back to that last thing. So they might lose some friends because, they might say, well, my mom won't let me hang out with you anymore because you got pregnant. She doesn't want me to get pregnant. Like it's, contagious. But, that can happen, and tell them, it's not forever, and they'll make, other friends. I know at that point in their time, they're not thinking like that at all. But again, they're good friends, will stick by them and be there for them. Limited community integration. Again, it depends on their family orientation, the support system they have in their school or whatever. They can have, some limiting factors on getting out. And that's the worst thing for them. They don't need to be isolated. They feel isolated enough already. So you don't want to isolate them. You want them to be out and doing things. If they play an instrument, let them keep playing that instrument. Of course, now in sports, that's a different story. They might not be able to continue doing that. But, keep them involved in something. Keep them doing something. Naivete and susceptibility to potential victimization by others. I have met some people who come up in not the greatest situation who are very naive, very, Pollyanna type thinking that, oh, it'll all work out for the best. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be fine. Oh, boy. Because more often than not, they're disappointed, and it's hard if someone's going to be a parent. You want them to be living in reality. You want them to be in the level here, not depressed down here, or not in la la land up here. You want them to be on an even keel where they're supposed to be. So, that's a hard one to address because, if they're in that mindset, it's really hard to talk them out of it because they think they're being positive. But, sometimes people have their rose-colored glasses on and they can't see the reality of people. I can tell someone, he's talking bad about you and that's only going to escalate. And, this is not a relationship that's good for you, but until it goes down, they're not going to listen to you. And that's a shame. And that sets them up for being a victim, because if that's the attitude they take, then predators have radar. I mean, they can sense this, smell it, whatever, and that puts them up for being a victim. That sets them right up, and then predators are just looking for their prey. And you need to try and work with them on that. But unfortunately, when it comes to that, they really, a lot of times think, that they're not being naive, they're being a decent person or a nice person. And until someone comes along and does take advantage of them, they don't realize that is not always a good thing to be nice to people, because some people aren't being so nice to you. And if you let them, run over you and, if you're the doormat, they're going to do that. And so usually, unfortunately, what it takes is for someone to hit rock bottom and they are being abused before they decide to rise up and stop that. But, you can certainly try and tell them. You should try and tell them and get them, to realize, hey, this is probably not the best relationship going. Difficulty managing conflict. I have dealt with people in coaching situations where you cannot tell them anything because they feel like you're yelling at them. Oh, oh, oh. And they can't handle any conflict. And, part of coaching is to help people to achieve their goals. But if these people are exhibiting behaviors that keep them from achieving their goals, and yet they say they want to achieve their goals, it's kind of your job to point that out. It's like, well, you said you wanted to do this, but then you did this instead, which kept you from doing this, and you can spell it out to them. But sometimes, they can't handle that, they can't handle that. And a lot of times that's anxiety. And so I will coach people, if you might want to go talk to a counselor, because clearly, if I can't teach you, because coaching is about teaching, if you're doing it right, if you're a real coach, if you're one of them fly by night, give me a call, I'll tell you anything, pay me $1,000 a month. If you're one of them people, then, you shouldn't even be one of them people, God's watching. But, sometimes people's anxiety levels is a little more than you can deal with. And, if they're self-sabotaging, then you need to tell them, hey, I'm seeing this. You told me you wanted to do this, and we were, but then you turned around and did this, which, is not a way to get to this. So, worst thing is they get mad and say, I don't want to see you anymore. And you're like, well, okay, good. That's one less irritation on my plate. It's a shame. But, you can't, as the old saying goes, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's unfortunate truth. Temptations of alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, and caffeine, all of which are bad for babies. But again, if their friends are doing it, if they've been doing it up until this point, they're more likely to still want to do it. So you need to tell them the importance, of not doing this, that everything they take in affects their baby. Confusion about their sexuality. If they had sex because all their friends were having sex, but they really don't find this guy attractive, they actually find this girl attractive, there's confusion about their sexuality. That's something that you can say, we're not worried about that right now. We're worried about this. You're not there to talk them into or out of being anything. So, you can just listen and say, well, right now we're talking about this, because they need to figure that out for themselves. And if they need counseling in that area, they can go get that. Expression of sexual needs. Hormones, as if any has had children, sometimes hormones can make you, horny. So again, if they bring that up, that's really not your place to talk about that. Just realize it's a thing, and you can just say, well, that's normal. You're full of hormones. That's, but again, they don't want to be doing anything risky, like having a bunch of partners or, contracting an STD while they're pregnant. So, sexual safety, again, if they're engaging in sex, they should be using a condom, whether they're, pregnant or not, because you can still get an STD while you're pregnant. It's always not about birth control. And courtship. That's not something that people talk about anymore. That's an old-fashioned word. But it shouldn't be, because the way you have a healthy relationship is you meet, you like each other, you become friends, you hang out, you become boyfriend, girlfriend, you're boyfriend, girlfriend for a year or whatever, and then you decide you want to have a, serious relationship, or, some people rush into it. I think if you're, rushing into being boyfriend, girlfriend before you've been together or hanging out for a month, and that's too quick. That's my opinion. There are other people who disagree with that, but, there should be a proper courtship. There shouldn't be, I've gotten booty calls before, and me and that person never had any type of relationship ever. So there should be some respect for yourself. And you should have a person who wants to, have a proper courtship. And if that's how they got pregnant was, so and so, like, come on over, and then they did it. And you need to tell them that they need to have more self-respect for themselves. They are a pretty young woman, and they need to have a man who wants them, who is relationship oriented, who's not just give them a booty call and get them pregnant and then never speak to them again. They need to want more than that out of their relationships. Over-reliance on the parents. Some of these get pregnant, they revert back to toddlerhood. They can't do anything for themselves. They don't want to do anything for themselves. They want their parents to take care of the baby, want the parents to take care of themselves. So that's something you got to work on. And you got to talk to the parents about that too. Because parents want to take care of their children most of the time. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. But, if they're relying too much and not doing their own things, then basically mom and dad just had another kid, and a kid who went back to being a kid. So that's going to be all the more on their plate. You're going to want to get mom and dad involved in that. Say she needs to have, take care of her chores, whatever they are. She needs to do that herself. Understand if she's tired or whatever, but, she needs to do for herself so she doesn't become, equal in age with this baby that you have to take care of when you have two babies to deal with. Again, difficulty managing conflict. Sometimes there's conflict in a home, and you need to, again, talk with parents on this too. It's like, now's not the time to stress this kid out. This kid is pregnant. She's going to have a baby. Now's not the time to be on her so hard, putting a lot of pressure on her, because, a normal person has problems dealing with conflict at any given time, depending on the situation. But if you're pregnant, you're even more emotional, and, they can have problems dealing with this. So this is something also you want to get in with the parents on, and say, hey, this is not helping her. And they can get mad at you and fire you or whatever. That's fine, but at least you're telling them the truth, the right thing. Parental frustration and exhaustion. That's a fact. Parents get frustrated because they now have this emotional teen who's also more emotional because they're pregnant, and they get exhausted having to deal with all this. So you sometimes need to bring them in and talk about this, kind of do like a little family coaching, Well, what is the problem? What's frustrating? What is wearing you out? How can we deal with that? How can we reach an agreement where everyone will feel, supported, but, again, everybody doesn't have to be carrying everybody else. Excuse me. And if the problems are too big, where you feel like, there's some mental issues there, definitely, again, have your counselor referral that you can send them for family counseling. Parental and youth uncertainty regarding separation, autonomy, and letting go. Because eventually this person is going to be an adult, and they're going to graduate. They might move on to college, or, a career school, or just a job. And so they all need to come to an understanding. Like a lot of parents say, you're 18, you're out the door. Okay, they are 17 and a half, and now they're going to have a baby. Is that really what you want to do, is throw your kid out the door, at age 18, when they're unprepared and they're going to have a small, baby at that point in time. So there needs to be some reality, thinking here, about what's going on. Is this child mature enough to separate? Is it going to be, a total financial disaster for them to separate? These are things that need to be thought about, because some parents like that, and that's a shame. Gaps in real world competence, gaps in life skills, including hygiene, self-care, eating habits, sleep patterns, morning routines, health management, reliability, and punctuality. So these are things you can catch them up on. That's what this program is all about, catching them up on their maturity and social skills, because they're going to be a parent, they're going to have to be able to be a good parent, or we're going to keep getting worse and worse and worse as a society and de-evolving to the point where we're savages again. So, that's not something we want. So, if they're lacking in hygiene, you need to suggest to them that that's something they can work on now. They need to take care of themselves so that, um, they're not dirty and they don't stink. Self-care, again, taking care of themselves, bathing regularly, exercising, wearing appropriate, clothing. You see people out in shorts when it's, 28 degrees. That's not smart. Eating habits, you can get a handout. I mean, all, food stores or anything has handouts about eating healthy. So you can get a handout and talk to them about eating healthy, especially since they got another little person they're eating for two. Sleeping, you need your sleep, 6 to 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours. Everybody's different. Usually 6 to 8 hours is enough for everybody. But when you're pregnant, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need that little extra bit of sleep. So you need to tell them they need to get their sleep. It's not okay to stay up till, all hours of the night. If you're going to be a responsible parent, you're going to have to be able to get up. Morning routines. Babies wake up pretty early, and then you have to feed and change them and dress them and wash them, reverse order on that one. But then they have to take care of their own morning routine. So getting up is important. They can't lay in bed and hit the snooze 30 times like maybe they used to before they got up. Health management. They need to take care of themselves. They need to talk with their doctors if they're taking a medication and they're not sure they should. Really, when they find out they're pregnant, they should probably stop taking all medications until they see their doctor again and say, hey, I'm on this for this and this, so that can I take this? And then they would let them know. Reliability. Teenagers not known for being super reliable, but if they're going to be a parent, they're going to have to be reliable. They have to let that child know that they're there for them. And that's an important thing. So you need to teach them how to be reliable. If they say they're going to do something, they should do something, and stuff comes up. I know I've said I'm going to do something and then stuff comes up with my kids or whatever, and I can't do that thing, and sometimes people get mad and their feelings get hurt, but you're like, life happens. The kids come first, so I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. But, you have to teach them basically to be reliable, that, they need to be, if they say they're going to do something, they should do that thing, barring, disaster, emergency, or, unforeseen circumstances. It's usually how mine hits, unforeseen circumstances. But they need to learn to be reliable so they can be there for that child on a reliable level, where the child trusts that they're going to be there for them. Otherwise, you're going to have, attachment issues, and that's going to affect the child the rest of their life. And punctuality, they have to learn to be on time, because, unfortunately, a lot of teenagers who get pregnant end up in the social systems, where they're getting some, social aid of some sort. So they need to be there for appointments on time, doctor's appointments on time. So if they're not known for being on time, if they're a constant 20 minutes late or whatever, I know people like that, then that's something you need to work on them with, is being on time. Okay, well, that was our bell. So that's all for now. I hope you found it educational or informational, and I will leave the link in the description, so that you can help me to continue this educational outreach. And that's all for now. Until next time.